So, this is the season 2 premiere, if you will, of Six Reels Deep. So yeah, we're gonna be doing something a little bit different here with the season here, right? So what you're gonna hear right now with this specific video, this is just the first part of what is essentially gonna be a discussion where myself, Ricardo Medina, of course, thank you for coming through.
Yo, no problem.
CC Lilford.
Thank you for having me on here, Matthew.
And VFX Guru. Yep, VFX Guru, Michael Richards.
Hey everyone. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So we are all gonna share our top lists. I'm just gonna say that for now. Top lists as far as best horror movies or top favorite horror movies that we have seen over the past 25 years. Because yes, folks, 2025 makes it, a quarter into this new century, if you will. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about the best horror films that we've seen from January 1st, 2000 to now it's in 2025, right? So that's basically what we're gonna do, right? So yes, from here, well, with this premiere here, I will kick things off with my list, and then periodically you will hear everyone else's as well, right? There's a couple other guests who will be popping up as well to share their list, but unfortunately they couldn't make it to this one specific chat here, but you will hear their list eventually, and we will talk about, as we did before, we will celebrate the anniversaries of some, popular horror films as well, and touch on a few releases as well, right? So yeah, let's waste no time. We're gonna just basically talk about, best horror films of the past 25 years, right? So I will kick things off, right? So with my criteria, right? So I just want to make it known that, because it's our individual list, right? We're gonna have our own little criteria in terms of how we came up with this list in the first place, right? So mine is simple, right? No remakes, no sequels, one director per entry. And I'm going to drop this on you all now. So Ricardo, you're welcome. I will also be doing a top 10 list. What? Yes, because I wanted to do 15, but I was like, 15's cool, but 10
is a nice wrong number.
There's something about 10, boy. 10 is like, all right, these 10 have to be the absolute best things that you've seen like ever in your life, right? And it's all a matter of opinion, guys, right? So if I might see a title, you might, what, that? No, that's terrible. Or you might end up watching the film for yourself and think it's pretentious or boring or whatever it is, right? But this is just my individual view on, this is just my perspective. That's what it is, right? But yeah, Ricardo, I didn't want you to be the only one to do a top 10 list. So yeah, I'm going to do a top 10 list as well, right? That means, of course, that there are some honorable mentions, right? And what I will say is that when I reveal what films are in my top 10 list, I will reveal a couple more honorable mentions. Because if I give out the honorable mentions now, those honorable mentions, it'll pretty much spoil what the list is, right? So anyway, so honorable mentions time, just gonna run through them in terms of listing, right? Sorry, in terms of just title. Don't get mad at me, folks. I really want them to be on my list, but again, top 10, right? 20 Days Later.
Okay, wow.
That's actually not even in my top 100.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, I should mention too. Wait. So, Michael, you seriously did that top 100 list?
Well, I ordered the top 25. Actually, no, I ordered the top 50, and I can list out the top 15 out of that for you.
Okay.
But it was really hard to narrow down even to 25.
I feel that.
Okay, I understand, right. So yeah, 20 Days Later, as much as I love that, I think that it is a great zombie film. I just love the fact that, it's very British, it feels very much like,
oh yeah,
if the zombie apocalypse took place in England, that's exactly how it would play out, right, Blade 2.
Oh, okay. You can't Bleed 2 as a horror.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, okay.
I know. It's an action
horror
film.
elements. But
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, the thing is, my film.
No, but those vampires do. Those vampires are like downright frightening, you know what I mean? Especially.
No, they're right. It was good, and they're horror elements,
look here.
but I don't consider it a horror film.
Yeah, I don't think
I
it's
understand.
horror.
Well, what I mean,
like
right?
horror action though.
It is. It is,
Yeah.
folks, an action film, right? But
A
like
little bit of a stretch.
with my list in particular, especially with my honorable mentions, I really wanted to add like crossover films, like where certain subgenres kind of bleed into each other, right? So yes, I will mention a horror comedy in my top 10. I will I mention an action horror here, horror fantasy, stuff like that. I didn't want it to just be pure horror, right? Because let's be real, like most horror films these days, especially the celebrity ones, always include some other genre as well, right?
Yes.
Even if it's like drama, right? It's not just a pure horror film, right? So but Blade 2, that's honorable mention for me. His House from 2020.
Okay.
This came out on Netflix. This was one of my favorite films of 2020. It introduced me to Wonmi Mozaku. If I got the surname wrong, forgive me. Yeah, she would be in. Well, let me just give her the next honorable mention. Sinners.
Okay.
She was in Sinners, right? She was the lover of oh gosh, I forgot which of the twins, right? But she was Smoke. Right?
Oh yeah. She's the actress who's also in Lovecraft Country, right?
Lovecraft Country,
yes, and Deadpool Wolverine, and Loki.
She's fantastic.
Same character.
Yeah, but this was the film that introduced me to her, and as far as this immigrant take on the ghost story genre, I thought it would, right? And it's on Netflix right now, right? So you can check it out, right? Talk to Me. Very impressive debut feature from the Filipinos. Great, debut feature. Dr. Sleep, and I've seen this too because The Shining is my because The Shining is my all-time favorite horror movie. So just the mere fact that Mike Flanagan was able to take that novel and turn it into a great follow-up of The Shining, was great in my opinion, right? Dawn of the Dead. The 2004 one, of course, right? Which I was reminded of. Was written by our boy James Gunn. I forgot about that. I was like, oh yeah, that's where the friendship started from. It was like, oh okay, it was like way back, right?
Snyder and Gunn was together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they go way back.
And two more to go. Drag Me to Hell. Really enjoyable, film from Sam Raimi. A lot of fun. I remember seeing that in theaters, just having a blast with it. And I am a huge Evil Dead fan, so just seeing him, back in that horror comedy lane was great to me. Especially because this was a couple of years after he gave us Spider-Man 3. I mean, right?
Film that shall not be named.
Moving on, right? And last but not least, from Neil Marshall. From 2005, The Descent. I really wanted this to be in my top 10 list. I mean, this was just a very visceral, bare knuckle, horror film, right? I mean, yes, implausible at points, right? But just how he was able to execute this claustrophobic story really worked for me. I am still blown away by the fact that this was filmed mostly in a set, right? Because you're watching all these cave interiors, like, wait, but didn't find a big ass cave and film inside there? It's like, no, they actually filmed a set. Like, you're serious? Okay, so I need to look up the behind the scenes of that though, right? And I think because of its 20th anniversary, it's getting like a special theatrical release in the States. I'm not sure where. I just need to look it up. Yeah, I think it's in the States and England as well. I should look it up. I think it's going to be rescreened, in the United States, right? So CC, you're lucky, right? There you go.
I'm very excited. I did not know they were re-releasing. We're going to talk about The Descent when we get to my list, but I
know you love that movie because I went on Letterboxd. I saw you give it like a 5 out of 5. Yeah.
Oh, I love The Descent. No, we'll get to The Descent, but I did not know it was getting a theatrical re-release. So thank you for that. I need to. Where's my calendar?
Yeah. All right. Well, while you get that, right? So let me just jump into the list here one time, right? So again, this is just personal preference here. So, of course, you do have to agree with my picks here, right? And in this case, as is number 10, I mean, it could have gone any particular way as far as, 6 to 10, but this chose this as number 10 because I felt like the other 9 films are better, right? But that's not to say that, this film is great, right? And this particular film is far from a masterpiece, but this was one that just really stuck out to me, even the first time that I saw it. Right, even though there were points in time where I was like, I'm not really sure what the story is or where it's going, but it just stood out to me for a specific reason. And then the more viewings I gave it, it's like, yeah, this kind of had to be on my list.
Right.
From 2018, from Panos Cosmatos, Mandy.
Yeah.
That's my number 10. I am just a sucker for midnight movies, for cult films. Those kind of films that you just watch late night, lights off, and you just seeing this glow that's emanating from your TV. Again, well, that's what I said with my review of I saw the TV glow, right? That seems sort of like surrealist, that sort of like psychedelic visual energy that film brought, right? I felt like Mandy did it better as well, right? Better, but then it did it before as well, right? But yeah, Mandy stood out to me so much, and in recapping it, I was like, yeah, boy, this needs to be on my list, right? Yes, you could argue for days as far as the story being the big weakness of the film, right? It is a film that is much more about style than substance, right? But the style in it, though, just stood out to me so much, though. I am just a sucker for that sort of like weird, bright psychedelic visuals, right? And I just love that, right? And this show oozes in that, right? And the story itself is just pure 80s cult cinema goodness, right? With a fantastic performance. I'm gonna make the argument, a fantastic performance by Nicolas Cage, because yeah, they just let this guy off the leash the moment the conceit takes place and he loses someone. Well, I mean, it's in the title right there, boom. And he just goes all in on this part of revenge. And it is gloriously bloody and brutal and insane. And he just goes off the rails with this, though. I mean, this is a showcase of Nicolas Cage. I mean, we make fun of him all the time for his bad movies, but the good films are really good and the great ones are really great, right? I think as far as performance-wise, this is one of the best that I've ever seen him in, right? But really for me, the big takeaway though is just them visuals though. There's a shot involving Mandy herself, who is played by Andrea Riseborough, and we have Linus Roach, who plays Jeremiah San, who is the leader of this religious cult called the Children of the New Dawn. And it's just basically both shots of them being superimposed, right? And there's there's some LSD use as well, so it kind of justifies the weird visuals, right? But yeah, you're just seeing their faces and they're brightly lit, right? And it's all these weird colors, right? And it just sort of like feeds into each other to the point that they look the same. And just how they do that, though, is kind of brilliant in my opinion, right? But yeah, this is a show that just oozes in style, though, but it just kind of revels in that 80s Stephen King worship, but just that off the wall, just Evil Dead kind of energy as well too, in terms of the horror and the action as well too. Because as you mentioned, this is more action than horror, right? But there's some horrific elements in it as well, right? But yeah, this is a cult classic in the making, though. And yeah, this is one that I could see myself just watching on a late night on a weekend for years to come, man. So yes, Mandy from 2018 has to be in my top 10, right? I should mention also too, props to Panos, right? Because in terms of like his filmography, he hasn't really put out much over the years, right? But he was actually fortunate to actually make an episode of the recently released Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, right? Yeah, he did that one particular episode with the I haven't seen it in a long while, right? What's the name of it? The Viewing. That's it.
The Viewing, yeah.
Yeah, so he did that, and yes, he took that sort of psychedelic visual style, and he made it work. He actually made it work here, right? Yeah, he is clearly a child of the 80s. He's into that whole VHS kind of era, so you could see that in that particular episode, right? Speaking of Guillermo del Toro, number 9 is a Guillermo del Toro film, right? Now, CC, don't get mad at me. I know you're a fanboy, right? As much as I wanted to put Pan's Labyrinth on my list, right? And this is another one of those films that I mean, it is a dark fantasy film, right? But like in doing research for this list, I saw some people put it as a horror film, and okay, like Yeah, you could talk about Blade 2 for these, right? But this one in particular, that one is like, it's more of a dark fantasy than a horror film, right? But people will argue, oh, well, there's horror stuff in it, so that means the horror. It's like, all right, if you say so, right? But yeah, this particular film, I think, is more horror than dark fantasy, in my opinion. So yes, my number 9, no surprise, CC, The Devil's Backbone from 2001.
Applauds.
Oh, yeah, that is an awesome movie.
Yes.
That
And
doesn't
as
make my
someone,
list, but it's an awesome movie.
yes, and as
So
someone who
good.
owns the Trilogia de Guillermo del Toro box set, courtesy of the Criterion Collection, I had to put this movie on my list, right? And I would say that this film is the progenitor to Pan's Labyrinth. This is where, he was able to step out of the Hollywood zone just for a while. He actually filmed in Madrid, and he was just able to tell this really solid, old-fashioned, very emotionally driven ghost story, right? And I could tell just from this movie here, it's like, oh, okay, I know how to do this now, and let me just drop Pan's Labyrinth. Because yeah, Pan's Labyrinth pretty much takes what this movie did and just step things up considerably, right? But yeah, this one just told a really great ghost story. I love how it's framed within the whole, Spanish Civil War as well. And it just told this very endearing but very, very sad story, right? Yeah, about these orphan, kids, right, who are in the school. And is the war is still going on, right? But they're just pretty much left in the school as outcasts, right? And you have this one kid who is just trying to understand the world around him. Carlos as the character, and a great performance by Eduardo Noriega, who plays Jacinto, a great villain here, right? And yeah, there's this one kid who was killed, and you're trying to understand what happened and why and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, he is the ghost in the story as well, right? But yeah, it's the stuff that Del Toro loves a lot, just framing, horror elements with, history as well. And also the innocence of youth, which he also explored very well in Pan's Labyrinth as well, right? But yeah, as a very, very bleak and very sad ghost story, yeah, this absolutely works for me, right? But I should also mention this lastly, but there's a beauty to it as well too, right? Because even though the subject matter is very dark and bleak, yeah, it's very beautifully shot and just very, very well too, right? And if you've seen Pan's Labyrinth and you haven't seen this movie, trust me, when you watch this movie, you'll understand. Oh, this is where, he got that. This is where he got the storytelling, style from, basically, right? He was just able to translate it even better now with Pan's Labyrinth. So yes, I had to throw this film in. That's my number 9, right? Number 8, a movie that will continue to divide people to this day. It divided people when it was dropped in 2017, and I will never forget when it came out on digital, and Ricardo and I were able to see it for Bears Beats and Bailey, and we absolutely loved it, and it made it to our best stuff of that year. Darren Aronofsky's Mother.
Ooh.
Yes, I had to put that there.
Also speculative as a horror movie, but okay.
I know. And it was... And it was one of those shows I had to sit there. I was like, is this a horror boy? Is this really a horror boy?
Kinda, yeah. I can understand why you might say that, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
But
to me, that is the beauty of the genre of horror, right? Is that you don't even have to follow a specific rule, like a specific list of rules when it comes to a horror film, right? Because when I tell you what the premise is, or this brief synopsis of this, no, this is more of a fantasy than anything else. But even calling it fantasy isn't even doing the show justice, right? But yeah, it is technically a fantasy horror, but there are elements of it. There are truly, truly horrific elements in it. One involving a child, that's all I'll say. Yeah, boy. Right. That's all I'll say, right? But yeah, basically, in a nutshell, what Darren does, right? He just basically takes his issues with theology and he explores it in a very, very creative way, right? Although in a very controversial way, right? So the best way to sum up this movie is, does God really care about Earth? As in planet Earth, or in this case in the movie, Mother Earth. How much does he really care about the Earth, right? And it's funny that this movie came right after he did Noah, right? Because flood, right, and all that kind of stuff, right? So that is just really Darren just asking these questions, right? And I have no problem with a man like him asking questions like this. I'm not saying that the movie has to answer them or he has no right to ask these questions. He is an artist, he's a filmmaker, so it's like, here's what, this is my canvas. Paramount actually giving me money to ask these questions. So here we go, right? So yeah, and the end result is a movie that, yes, really polarized viewers. And many people call this movie a masterpiece. Other people thought it was pretentious and boring and dull and made no sense. But for me, though, this was just an artist at the height of his powers, right? Just being able to say, here's what, Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, I want you to be my movie. Jennifer, you're gonna play Mother Earth, and Javier, you're gonna play God. Slight spoiler, he plays God. And I just want you guys to be in a house, and we're gonna have characters come into the house, and things are gonna get very uncomfortable and weird and creepy and effed up, and that's my movie. And somehow it works. And when I rewatched this movie, I was roped in from frame one to the end. I was just smiling. I was like, wow, my Darren, you got away with this, no? You actually got away with this shit, boy. Wow. Round of applause, right? And it just keeps you locked in, though, even though you have your slow moments here and there, right? It keeps you locked in, though. And then when shit literally hits the fan, it does, though. And it becomes this instant clusterfuck of what am I watching? What is going on? What the hell? And I just get creeped out at this whole thing just escalate to at this non-stop level, right? But yeah, at the end of the day, I just had to put this here because yeah, this is a movie that will be debated for years to come. And the mere fact that this guy actually put this out there, and it's from Darren of all people, because I could have easily put like Black Swan in this, right? But I was like, nah.
Right.
Like, as much as I love Black Swan, but nah, Mother was a movie where it's like, listen, when I retire, Dread, if there's one movie that's gonna sum up my career, it's not gonna be Requiem for a Dream. It's gonna be this movie. This is going to be this movie here, right? So yeah, this is why it's in my number 8. Let's move quickly here. Number 7 is a movie that is familiar in terms of like greatest films of all time, greatest in terms of world cinema. It made it to a lot of people's like best of lists as far as the best of the 2000s, best of all time, and all that kind of stuff. But there's a reason why I put this on my list here, right? So number 7 from Thomas Alfredson from 2008, Let the Right One In. This is a Swedish horror movie.
Yeah.
A great take on the vampire genre. And a very endearing and very sweet, though, romantic film as well too, right? Even though it is centered on preteen kids, right? But yeah, the premise is about this kid named Oscar who is just isolated. He's alone, he's bullied a lot, and he meets this girl by the name of Eli who just so happens to be a vampire. And there's this bond that takes place, but they learn a lot about each other and the world and whatnot, and just set within this cold, wintry backdrop of this Swedish city. And yeah, I remember watching that back in 2000s because a lot of people were talking about this as one of the best of the 2000s. And what was like, they're actually right. It's great, but I haven't seen that movie in a long while. And when I recapped it for this special here, I was like, yeah, boy, this movie still works. The direction, the music, the acting from the two leads is great. It still holds up, right? But for me, why this stands out is that it just sort of takes the whole, like, what we assume vampire movies always have to follow, right? It's always about the main vampire and the person who he or she chooses as their victim, if you will, right? But it sort of flips it on its heels and just sort of treat it as, yeah, these are two outcasts and they're just looking for they're just looking for friendship. They're just looking for a reason to belong in this world, right? And you get that, right? And it's just so emotional. It just totally works for me, right? So yeah, I just had to add this here because I mean, not in addition to it being from the 2000s, yeah, I just had to throw in a vampire movie in this one. And yeah, for me, this is one of the best that I've seen, right? So that's not me saying that this is the best vampire movie I've ever seen, but yeah, this is definitely one of the best that I've ever seen, right? Number 6, gonna make things a light now. Gonna make things a light here now, right? One of my all-time favorite horror comedies, and this was one of the films. Actually, this was the film that kickstarted, this series here of 6 Reels Deep. From Edgar Wright, 2004's Shaun of the Dead. Yes, this was one of my favorite horror movie. Well, this was one of my favorite movies of the 2000s, and this still remains one of my all-time favorite horror comedies. This put me on to Edgar Wright. This put me on to Nick Frost. This put me on to Simon Pegg. This put me on to the Cornetto Flavors trilogy, which I own on Blu-ray as well. I absolutely love that trilogy, even though I'm a little iffy on The World's End, right? And I kind of love, I kind of put Hot Fuzz over this, but at times I would put Shaun the Dead over Hot Fuzz, so it's like that, right? But yeah, Shaun the Dead really put me onto these guys. What I love though is just Edgar's ability to just translate his love for, George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and just translate it similar to like what Danny Boyle did with 20 Days Later, translate it in a British lens, right? While 20 Days Later was very bleak, right, and very dark, this one is just very crass and silly and over the top, right? And there's always like this sense of humor that just permeates throughout this film, right? But I love that the film does not shy away from the fact that, look, this is a zombie apocalypse that's taking place. People die in this movie. People die in very uncomfortable and very heart-rending ways. And I like that, Edgar doesn't shy away from these things, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of energy from the direction to the camera work to the writing as well. I love how quick the quips are, just the dialogue and just how, characters bounce off each other. This put me onto Simon Pegg, and I mean, he is Sean all the way though. This is the fact that he used a cricket bat though to beat a zombie's head in. Just always still to me though, and like I said in my review here, if I end up in a zombie apocalypse, they should have a shotgun. Okay, can I have to have a shotgun in these situations? I want to have a cricket bat, right? And this movie was like, yes, get a cricket bat when it comes to this stuff, right? But yeah, in terms of the writing, in terms of the comedy, and especially the timing, this has great comedic timing in it, right? But yeah, I absolutely love Shaun the Dead, and I had to put this in my top 10, right?
So now, Matthew, before you go on, as you mentioned, Shaun of the Dead, and I agree with you, it's a great film. I don't necessarily consider it strict horror, but yes, it's a great film. But have you ever heard about the movie that was kind of a parody of this called One of the Dead that came out in 2012?
I saw it. Yes, I did.
It's basically a Spanish version of that.
Yeah, I saw it.
I think that is way funnier than Shaun of the Dead.
Okay, I saw it twice. I remember they had it during the TNT Film Festival, believe it or not. I remember really enjoyed it though, but I have to rewatch it though. I had a lot of fun with it, right? But I haven't seen it in a long while though. But when I see it for myself, I'll be like, yeah, Mike's right.
Yeah, as good as Shaun of the Dead is, I think One of the Dead is way more leans way more into the comedy aspect of it. And even though it's technically, a foreign language film, it's like at no point did it matter that it was Spanish, right? It was actually more enjoyable to me than the original Shaun of the Dead.
All right.
Yeah, don't forget, the somebody who I wish would do more with his work, Lima the Dead. Right.
Yeah. Right. This, by the way, folks, is a little short film that a colleague of ours did. But yeah, boy. Yeah. I am still wishing for the day that it gets expanded into a full feature because listen, that was a great premise.
Listen, I wish somebody get out do some money. He make Lime of the Dead, Vibes of the Dead, Stush of the Dead, something. He could do all kind of thing with that.
Yeah.
Like the man, like it's like a really talented filmmaker. It's a shame that he do more now.
That's true, yeah. So now so now we've reached the top 5. This is where shit's gonna get real, right? Again, my opinion, so you do have to agree with all my picks, right? But boy, just compiling this top 5 section, boy, it was hard, but it was a lot of fun, right? Number 5. The moment I heard the title of this and I saw the trailer, I saw that poster, and the company it was released by, I was like, I had to see this in cinema. Because, slight spoiler, you don't get much of this distribution company's movies in theaters. So when one does show up and it gets a lot of praise, you need to go and see it. From 2015, the debut of Robert Eggers' The Witch, or The Witch, as Ricardo just called it, right? Yes.
Right. Good.
I will never forget seeing this on big screen. And I was just chilled from start to end, and it had nothing to do with the AC, right? It just gave me chills, right? This is I'll never forget seeing this for the first time, right? Amongst all the weird and scary shit that takes place, right? I should also mention too, right? This movie made me scared of a goat.
You know,
Black
yeah.
Phillip is one of the
Black Phillip.
scariest creatures,
Yeah, Black Phillip.
or scariest
Side-eye.
animals ever
That
put to
goat.
screen.
Right.
Yeah, boy, there's a moment with Black
I
Phillip.
take it you haven't started watching Alien Editors yet?
No, I have. We have. Well, Ricardo and I, we talked about the first two episodes of it, right? But yeah, I know shit's gonna get even more wild, right? But we're gonna wait till the season ends and then we'll cover it, right? But yeah, when Black Phillip was introduced into that story and he kills a character in the movie, boy, I jumped. When I rewatched the film, I jumped as well. And there's this close up, this slight zoom in into Black Phillip, and dude is just breathing it. Just like, and I am just like freaked out at this, right? But anyway, it is just a dinner scene with Anya Taylor-Joy, Ralph Ineson, aka Galactus, right? If you saw the Fantastic Four movie,
I forget he was in this too.
and it's just a simple dinner scene, right? But because it's just lit with candlelight, right? And because the place done dark already, and it's in this already spooky ass forest, that is like one of the creepiest scenes in this entire movie, right? It's just a dinner scene, huh? And that just goes to show just how great of a film this is, right? That even in the quiet moments, there's this sense of dread, right? I love how the film touches on, religion, how we view religion as well, right? And how it frames it in terms of witchcraft and stuff like that, right? Anya, to me, works in this story as well, right? Because it's her, coming into adulthood,
Right.
sorry, and it's just framed like, oh, look at you becoming a woman. That means that
Right.
you're a witch. Look at you, haha, right? And
Right.
and one thing I love about Robert Eggers, right? He's a guy who does his research. I love that there's a disclaimer at the end of the movie that says, this is based off of actual text that was written back in the 19th century and all these things. They did research, especially when it comes to dialogue, the way how they talk, that British accent, the British accent and terminology they use.
New England accent.
Yeah, New England accent, sorry, right? Yeah, it's all real. It's all research and whatnot. I love that, right? But yeah, just how it takes the real life aspect of witchcraft in New England history, right? And yeah, it tells this very great, very compelling story. Yeah, absolutely worked for me, right? But Robert Eggers, to me, is the star of it as well, too. Yeah, just the direction, the cinematography, and the storytelling does here. Yeah, it absolutely works. Just a genuinely creepy film. So no, it's not a film that, will keep me up at night after I see it, but it is one that still creeps me out to this very day, right? And just to mention, quick honorable mentions, as much as I wanted them to be on my list, yeah, boy, they had to end up being honorable mentions. Yeah, The Lighthouse, which was one of my favorite films of 2019, and Nosferatu. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think that Robert.
It is one of the best movies I've seen in a long while.
I know, boy, and I was fortunate to see it in theaters too. I was like, yes, this is great. I love this, right? Yeah, but as much as I wanted them to be on this list here, I had to give it his debut feature, right? Number 4. As much as I wanted to put the film that he will be synonymously known for, I had to agree with you, Ricardo. I think that his follow-up is better. 2019, from we boy Jordan Peele,
Okay.
Us.
Wow.
Yes,
Alright,
Us
Oh my
is on
God.
my list. And yes,
What?
honorable mention is Get Out. Yes, listen. I love Get Out. That was one of my favorite films of the past decade, right? It will be showing up in another best of list by year's end. That's a slight spoiler, folks. Yes, it is a great film. It is a masterpiece, and I recapped it in terms of this list here, right? In terms of the screenplay, it is one of the best that I've ever seen materialize on screen, though. Like this, the screenplay that John Peele wrote, though, deserves that Oscar. That is a great piece of storytelling that he did here, right? And how he was able to use that, well, pretty much use this invasion of the body snatchers as premise to touch on, race, right? Race relations in the United States, right? But what he did with Us, right, was basically say, here's what, right? I don't want you guys to pigeonhole me, and I don't want you all to think that I am like the next Spike Lee, where every single film is going to be about race, right? No. I am a horror fan, and I want you to understand this, right? I also need to step everything up here because I don't want to make Get Out 2, right? As much as I would want to, right? And here, he just took this great Twilight Zone premise and somehow made a great film out of it, right? So while this is that we could argue for days whether Us is better than Get Out, all that kind of stuff, right? But for me, as still as a sophomore feature, that's why I have it up here. As a sophomore feature, this is one of the best that I have ever seen, right? Dude was able to take this very unbelievable premise about doppelgangers, sorry, that live in these tunnels in America
So weird.
and somehow
Love
make
it.
it so plausible enough that at the very end I'm like, I am genuinely creeped out by this. And what he does so
We'll
well,
agree to disagree on
Right.
this one.
all right,
because
that's fine.
I
That's
don't
fine.
like Us at all.
Okay. I know that there are some who will just look at this premise and say, this makes absolutely no sense. This is implausible to the 10th degree. This makes absolutely no sense, right? But is the social, or I should say the socio-economic aspect of it that's what he's touching on, right? It's basically him saying, what if all these impoverished people that, throughout American history that we just sort of left behind for years, what if I just take that and use this to tell what is essentially a zombie apocalypse? That's what it is. It's basically Night of the Living Dead
Okay.
retold in a modern context. That's what it is.
I don't agree, but you do you.
Okay. So, but this one was Jordan at the end of the day as a wrap up here. Jordan saying, "Listen, I don't know if you understood this with Get Out, right? But I love Twilight Zone. I love the Twilight Zone, right? And I love the Twilight Zone as well too. That is one of my top five favorite TV shows of all time, right? And it's funny that he was able to do a 2-season remake of it, right? It's just that I felt like, if I could just touch briefly on that series, as much as I get what he was going for with it, though, basically trying to retell the old stories didn't really work. And slight spoiler, folks, pretty much saying that you are going to be the torchbearer of this series by having your season 1 finale include the ghost of Rod Serling himself was a mistake in my opinion. He sort of shoots himself in the foot with that one. You come in and say just right out the gate, yes, I'm going to carry the torch of Rod Serling. It's like, no, bro. No, don't do that, right? And it's so funny, so ironic at the end of the day that yes, the second season ended up being the last, right? But yeah, great performances by Lupita Nyong'o and Winston Duke. It's funny, it's dark, it's twisted, it's demented. It is weird. I can't stress this enough. This is a weird movie, and somehow he made this movie work so well. And the writing, of course, is stellar, in my opinion, right? But yes, we could argue for these as to whether the script is better than Get Out. I don't think so personally, right? But it's just that he was able to take this weird, really weird premise and make this shit work. Yeah, that's why I have Us as number 4. Agree to disagree, right? Number 3.
Definitely agree to disagree.
I know. I really wanted to put Us there, boy. Sorry, I really wanted to put Get Out there. But Get Out would have been too easy in my opinion, right? Even though, yes, Get Out is a great film, right? Number 3. One of the best horror films of the 2010s, bar none. And this is also a debut feature as well. From 2014, Jennifer Kent's The Babadook.
Okay.
Yes.
Starting to name good movies.
Yep. I had to put this on my list, right? I did like this didn't even show theatrically in Trinidad, right? I just sort of found out about it
I don't think
through social media and through, YouTube reviews, right? And then I saw it for myself, I was like, wow, this is great though, What this show does so well, Trent, is it does something so brave, right? It sort of creates this new monster, right? This boogeyman monster, and make it one of the creepiest monsters ever put to screen, right? Like this when you see the character, right? Especially when it says ba ba dog. It's kind of weird though, And I'm just there like, this is not based off of Australian folklore, legend, or anything like that. This is like a genuinely brand new character, this brand new creature that Jennifer created. Because yes, she wrote the script as well, right? And somehow it works, right? I love that it taps into the basic stuff that we know about the boogeyman, right? And it borrows a lot from, German expressionism as well, too, right? Very cabinet of what is cabinet of Dr. Caligari as well. It draws a lot from that as well, right? Especially with the look and the design as well, right? But what makes this show works, right? And it still worked for me, and it hit me deeply as well, too, especially with where I'm at in my life. It touches on grief, and how it does that, boy, really, really hit me to my core, right? Because it centers on this single mother whose husband dies when she was about to give birth to her only son, right? And the son, when he's introduced, is very unruly. He's flat out annoying, right? But yeah, he sees this Babadook creature, and then there's this book that comes out of nowhere, and it pretty much tells them, listen, like, Babadook does X, Y, Z, and you should be very careful, right? But yeah, how it touches on grief, though, really, really hit me, right? In the sense that grief will always be a part of you, right? And it will always be this one shadow that will be lingering, alongside you, right? And how it was able to frame this with this conceit really worked for me. There's one moment involving the mom, who's played brilliantly by Essie Davis. She's possessed by the Babadook, and then the son, who's played by Noah Wiseman, pretty much gets the demon out, right? And then she pretty much like pukes it out, right? And then she just becomes comatose, right? And Samuel, that's his name, right? Samuel is just trying to wake his mom up. He's like, mommy, no lie, guys, tear rolled on my. A horror movie never did that for me before. It never did that to me. But because, lost my parents, that moment really hit me though. That's what I was reminded of, just the emotional power of this movie, Dread, and how it ends though just kind of summed it up for me. Yeah, you have to live with this. You have to live with it, right? But you can deal with it. You are strong enough to deal with it, right? And that to me is the message, if you will, of this movie. So yeah, this movie hit me really emotionally, right? And yeah, great movie. If you haven't seen it, you really need to, right? Number 2, again, going back to The Witch, right? When a certain company puts out movies and they manage to be shown theatrically, you kind of have to go out your way to see them. Even though I didn't get the chance to see his debut feature, and we talked about this, Ricardo, I told myself when he came out with his sophomore, I was going to see it. The moment the sophomore show, I was like, all right, I had to go and see this at any cost, right? And quick backstory. I'll never forget, I went to see, it was a double feature, right? So I went to see this film afterwards, right? But before that, I was with my friends, right? And we saw this film together. And right afterwards, I was like, you know what, I'm going to see this one show. And they were like, nah, I don't want to see that movie. It looked like arty-farty shit. I don't want to see that. So I went, saw it by myself, and then I came out, I was like, this is one of the best things I've seen for that year. From 2019, Ari Aster's Midsummer. I was contemplating whether this should be number 3 or not. If I should put this over Babadook. But for me, why I put this movie over Babadook, right? Because many people say that Babadook is much better than Midsummer, right? For me, it was the experience. Yeah, I know. For me, it was the experience of seeing this theatrically. How I felt when I came out of it, I was like, what the hell did I just watch? But at the same time, I was like, this is one of the best things I've seen in a long while. And when I recapped it, I just got that feeling all over again, right? This, if like, I would say like Wicker Man, right? Which this show draws heavily from, right? That was the film that put me on to folk horror. The Witch pretty much say, hey, we could still do folk horror in the 2010s, right? Midsummer was like, yeah, we could really do folk horror, you know what I mean? And yes, E24 really came through with an epic, to say the least, folk horror, boy, right? But this was one where, you go in and you tell yourself you have an idea where the show is going to go, and it just takes all these unexpected twists and turns, and the third act is just all sorts of fucked up. There's a shot involving a man in a bear suit, and you're thinking, oh, that's like, the Wicker Man remake, right? Which you laugh at, right? Because Nicolas Cage was in it, right? But that shot with the guy in the Wicker Man, right? In the bear suit. I'm not gonna say who it is. I don't want to spoil too much. That is something that I cannot unsee. That is one of the creepiest things I've ever seen, right? And that goes along all the other fucked up shit that goes on with this show, right? And then of course, as she mentioned, McGill Florence Pugh with it as well, and just the emotional breakdown that she goes throughout this entire film, right? Because she is getting over a very, very, very traumatic death involving her daughter, her sister and their parents as well, right? And her boyfriend and their friends. They study anthropology. They just take them to the Swedish village, and it's like, yeah, Swedish village, right? Midsummer festival, yeah, let's unwind and have fun, right? And it's just the slow burn nature of it all that I admire a lot with this. And it's just like it builds the tension. It just builds the creepiness, right? And then you're just there and you're like, okay, there's really nowhere these characters could go. Cause like if they just try to leave, somebody's gonna get killed, right? But yeah, it just builds and builds and builds. And then when you reach to the act territory, it's like you can't turn away from it though. It's all sorts of creepy and weird and messed up, but you can't turn away from it, right? It's graphic, it's disturbing, but you can't turn away from it though because you're just so wrapped in though. It just feels like the movie just put you on this. It just can sort of put you under the spell from frame one, and you're just there like watching all this stuff to the very end. It's like, listen, I'm not supposed to like this. This is all sorts of messed up, but I can't look away from it, right? And that to me is the key to what makes this show work, right? And mad points for just the creative decision to say here's what. It's not to say that there's no nocturnal moments in the movie, right? But a lot of the weird shit takes place during daytime. I love that, right? But yeah, great performances throughout, fantastic cinematography though, and I love the score for this, right? From Bobby Krilick, I believe that's the name of it, right? That's his name. But yeah, Ari Aster killed it with this film though. And just like with us, this was him saying, here's what, like, I know y'all love Hereditary. And yes, Hereditary is an honorable mention. Great debut film, right? But I love where it's like, here's what, y'all love Hereditary. Y'all thought Hereditary was messed up. Listen, let me drop Midsummer in your ass, right? And yeah, Midsummer was all sorts of messed up, right? But it's just the slow build of it. And yes, I will admit, it does take a long time to get to things, right? It does take a long time for the ball to roll, right? But when it rolls, it definitely rolls though, and it just leads to this fantastic, messed up climax and conclusion. And that's what I say when I saw it for the first time and I left that theater, I was like, yeah boy. That was an experience for me, and I'll never forget that experience, right? So yes, Midsummer is my second favorite, as far as this list goes, right? So what is my number one? You're probably wondering what is my number one, right? So with the exception of Sinners and Talk to Me, which I mentioned earlier, right? Y'all may have noticed, hopefully if you did, right, that I have not mentioned a film from the 2020s as yet in this list.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, because I said that, that means my number one pick is a movie that came out in the 2020s. It didn't come out theatrically. I was angry about that, but I got the chance to see it after the fact. Slight spoiler, Ricardo. You loved it. I saw it for myself. Loved it as well. And then I knew it had to be Melissa. I just wasn't sure where. And then the moment I rewatched that film, and this is just all for my second viewing, folks, I was like, this is number one for me. This is number one for me. From 2024, Coralie Fargets, if I got the name or the pronunciation wrong, please forgive me. The Substance.
It is about time you mention it.
The Substance.
Not really. Is this a horror as well?
The
Does
best.
this count as a horror?
It is.
a horror.
It is. But I understand why you asked that question, Ricardo, because this is one of the funniest things I've seen in a long while. It is pitch black humor and in all the right ways. But yes, folks, this is the best horror film I have seen for the past 25 years. I absolutely fuck with this movie. I love this film so much, right? It is funny AF, right? And I mean, it is what I mean funny, right? Because so for me, right? So for me,
it's amusing.
What I love the most about this film, right, is that it just wholeheartedly just goes into 80s body horror, right? And I'm talking about stuff that David Cronenberg did with like The Fly and Videodrome, and especially like the stuff that they were doing with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, right? And I should say this, right? The only Oscar win that they received was for best makeup and hairstyling, rightfully deserved. This is some of the best makeup and prosthetic effects that I have ever seen in a movie. And this show goes balls deep into that subgenre and say, here's what. We are going to give you the most glorious body horror movie you've ever seen in your life, Trent. It does that. It is so gross and disgusting. The disintegration, the body disintegration of the two leads in this movie, boy, and where it leads to the third act, though, is just glorious in my opinion, right? Again, some of the best makeup and prosthetic effects I've ever seen in a film, right? But yeah, this is body horror at its finest in my opinion, right? Also, I love too is how it takes that subgenre and adapts it to a very current and very relatable conceit, right? The idea of beauty, the idea of external beauty, the idea of ageism as well, too, right? Our obsession with looks and with our looks and all that kind of stuff, right? And Coralie just goes in, or Coralie, if I got this pronunciation, forgive me, right? Just goes all in, right? This show gleefully touches on social media and how it's people, even followers as well too. I am guilty of this. Right? Our obsession with selfies and all that kind of stuff though, just how people look on screen and all that kind of stuff, and it's just there to it's a highlight reel, right? It's a highlight reel. We know it's a highlight reel, right? But we don't care, right? Because we want to live vicariously through these celebrities, right? Through these people as well, right? I just love how this show just goes all in and just satirizes all of that, right? I mean, I could gush on this for days, right? But I'll try to be as fast as I can, right? While I was watching this, right? And even when the nominations took place for the Oscars, right? Okay, yeah, this shit was nominated, right? Keep in mind, this shit was nominated for Best Picture, right? It was also nominated for Best Actress, right? Because Demi Moore is the lead in this, right? I never forget when I watched this. I was like, Margaret Qualley should get nominated as well, right? Because she plays her doppelganger, right? But I will say though, Demi does a lot of heavy lifting in this movie, Trent. And she rightfully deserved that Oscar nomination. This is one of the best roles I've ever seen from her, right? And just what she had to do emotionally and physically as well, too, right? You have to buy into her wanting to take the substance, feeling jealous about her sexier doppelganger, and just that disintegration as well too, right? That she goes through that body disintegration, right? But why I felt like her performance was so spot on, right? Because she's an actress in her 50s, right? Back in the 90s, right? She was the bombshell of the 90s, right? And just bringing her into this film and saying, yeah, you're not the bombshell anymore, right? It's 2024, right? That is pitch perfect in my opinion, right? So yeah, there's so much layers to this movie, right? In terms of what happens when we get older, right? What happens to our physical health, what happens to, how people look at us, right? Externally and internally. It does that so well, right? But it's just how it just goes all in this movie. It is stylish as fuck. I just love the music for this though. Just this droning electronic music as well, though. I love how dark and ominous it is. The cinematography is fantastic. Editing fantastic. Writing brilliant in my opinion. And the performances from the two leads, Demi and Margaret, perfect in my opinion. And the third act, I love that third act so much. I love how bloody and visceral and gory it is. And just that final shot, I agree with you, Ricardo. That final shot is magnificent in my opinion. So I love the fact that, Ricardo and Michael, you guys said, oh, is that actually a horror? Yes, it is. It is a horror, right? But it is so
No, I
incredibly
agree.
funny in my
Substance is a
opinion.
horror. It's on my list. Not as high up, but it's on my list.
Yeah, but it is so incredibly funny, Jen. I am watching this. I had a goofy ass smile on my face. I'm watching this like, wow, she got away with this. This shit got nominated for Best Picture, this schlocky,
Finally, the
sleazy,
Oscars picking good movie.
and purposefully so as well
I
too,
know.
right? Got nominated, right? But at the same time, my last point I'll make, right? There's a lot of depth to this movie, right? It's not just schlock for the sake of schlock. It's not just sleaze for the sake of sleaze. There's a lot that's being said about modern society, the way how we look at beauty, the way how we quantify it, the way how we look at ourselves and how we demean ourselves because we don't match a certain beauty standard and all that kind of stuff. And yes, I am speaking as a man as well, right? Because yeah, I would look at images, like on on X or whatnot. I would see celebrities or whatnot. I'm like, why am I not living the life that they do, right? But then is the ageism aspect that really hit deep with me, right? Yeah, when you get older, I mean, how will people look at you? Will people take you seriously when you deteriorate in terms of health? What will happen to you? And it just touches on so much, right? But it uses the medium of body horror, right? Which is meant to sicken and disgust, to touch on, these very profound and very relatable issues, right? So yes, we could argue about Sinners being the best horror film of the 2020s thus far, like the top one. Nah, it's substance. Agree to disagree. The Substance is the best horror film of the 2020s thus far, and for me, it is the best horror film to come out of the past 25 years. So yeah, number one had to be The Substance.